this conflict. I'm joined now by Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Good to see you this morning, Senator. These huge bombs that the president is now pausing have already been used by the Israelis in Gaza, causing massive destruction, civilian casualties, and yet the State Department report says there is not enough information to conclude they violated any international law. Are you satisfied with that conclusion?
Well, Martha, thanks for a chance to be on with you again. Let's be clear about what that report also concludes, which is that because of how Hamas has conducted itself in this horrifying conflict that began with their tragic, barbarous attack on 1,200 civilians, in which they also killed 45 Americans on October 7th, because Hamas embeds its fighters and its war piles and its stockpiles underneath civilian targets, beneath hospitals and mosques and schools, the report by the State Department says it's difficult to conclude whether the unacceptably high civilian death toll is because of Hamas and its strategies and tactics, or because of Israel and how they've conducted this conflict. I do think it bears repeating every time we talk about this, that Hamas started this conflict, and Hamas and their conduct has largely driven the humanitarian crisis that continues in Gaza.
No question that Hamas started this on October 7th. But again, what you've seen is massive destruction, civilian casualties, some estimates of 14,000 children killed. Are you happy with the conclusions of the report, the conclusions I just read you?
Well, what matters more than the conclusions of the report, Martha, is what we do, what the United States does with our close and trusted ally, Israel. Privately, over many months, President Biden has urged, has cautioned Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right government to not go into Rafah at scale without first allowing for civilians, the million refugees who have moved down to Rafah at the direction of the IDF, and are now trapped up against the hard border with Egypt because Egypt will not allow any of them in. What matters, Martha, is whether the next stage of this conflict against Hamas, which Israel has every right to carry out, allows for civilians to get out of the way of any future attack on Rafah. And that's what President Biden has said now publicly as well as privately to our trusted ally Israel is, you can continue this war against Hamas, but if you're going to use our munitions and continue to have our support, you have to do it in a way that minimizes civilian casualties.
Senator Coons,
and
I know.
That means now that you've encircled Rafah, pausing and allowing civilians to move forward. Frankly, I also know just how hard President Biden is working to achieve a hostage deal and a ceasefire. That's the
which
other
has been paused, of course. Senator, I want to go back to the report. Your Democratic Senate colleague, Chris Van Hollen, said the administration ducked all the hard questions about making the actual determination. I think what they are trying to do is make clear that they recognize how bad the situation is, but they don't want to have to take any action to hold the Netanyahu government accountable for what's happening. Your response?
Well, I disagree. I think President Biden has taken forceful action, so much so there's been a lot of blowback for his recent public statement. And I'll remind you, other American presidents have done the same thing when a close, trusted partner isn't listening to private admonitions. It was President Reagan who repeatedly paused the delivery of F-16s when then Prime Minister Menachem Begin carried out a strike against a Syrian a nuclear complex and invaded southern Lebanon and conducted the war in southern Lebanon in a way that raised real concerns about the civilian consequences. So for my colleague and friend, Senator Van Hollen, to say that there's been no consequences and no forceful action by President Biden, I think misses the point here that President Biden has over and over urged the far-right government of Prime Minister Netanyahu to take the appropriate action and has now publicly said what the consequences will be.
So, Senator, what is the line for moving from inconsistent to illegal?
I think we'll be looking closely at the path forward that Prime Minister Netanyahu chooses in the days ahead. whether he will use American-supplied munitions to bomb and invade and attack Rafah and the million civilians who are there in order to get at the Hamas fighters who are buried in tunnels deep beneath Rafah, or whether he will move ahead with allowing those civilians to be relocated in accordance with a plan developed with the United States, a plan that isn't yet fully acceptable to us, or my preferred outcome, whether the months of work to make ready a deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel that will allow for a ceasefire, a hostage release, and a resolution to the Arab-Israeli conflict, and a regional security architecture that will deliver long-term security for Israel against Iran. And Martha, I'll remind you and your viewers, it was just 3 weeks ago that President Biden ably came to Israel's defense in partnership with the British, the French, the Saudis, and the Jordanians when Iran launched 300 missiles and drones at Israel. It's clear we are willing to strongly defend Israel, but he's urging Prime Minister Netanyahu to choose the path of peace that's right in front of him.
Senator,
requires reaching a deal with regional actors.
If Prime Minister Netanyahu does go in with a full-scale assault on Rafah, what do you think the president should do? We've heard his warnings.
I think we will act, and I think this will be up to the president in exactly what way he will act. But I'll remind you there's precedent for this. President Reagan was forced into a position where he did the same thing.
You remind us for that, but what do you mean he will act? He'll stop weapons? He'll stop more weapons?
Yes.
How many weapons? All weapons?
I'm clear that we will not abandon Israel. He will not stop providing defensive systems to Israel. Look, Hezbollah continues to attack Israel in the north. Just last night, there was more rockets and shells coming into the north of Israel.
So you're saying he'll stop offensive weapons?
Defenseless at all.
Not defenseless, but you talk about specifically defensive weapons. So are you saying offensive weapons should be stopped?
Look, I think whatever munitions, such as the 2,000-pound bombs that have previously been used in Gaza that are supplied only by the United States and that can cause massive civilian casualties, may well be paused. It is tragic that we're at this point. And, Martha, I want to conclude by saying that I hope Prime Minister Netanyahu is thinking about his legacy. Right now, his legacy is the huge strategic and defensive failure of October 7th. And his legacy could be a real gap, a break in the long, strong, bipartisan strategic relationship between the United States and Israel. I think that would be tragic. His legacy could instead be achieving regional security and peace for Israel.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us this morning.